Hello everyone, welcome to the special edition of Portsmouth This Week. Today is Wednesday the 24th of October, and our topic today is going to be a discussion of the options for the Portsmouth Wind Turbine moving forward. Our special guests today are Gary Crosby, Town Planner, welcome Gary, and Paul Raduca from the Providence Energy Group, whose firm has been hired to basically work with Gary on this thing moving forward. I guess the first thing, we had this a meeting of the Town Council, a workshop last night in the Town Hall. Gary, can you tell us what went on?
Sure. Thanks for having us. We presented to the Town Council a body of data and evidence and conversations and work that we've been doing for the last that began 4 months ago, the day that the wind turbine, we stopped operating the wind turbine. We found out that we had problems with the gearbox, so we ultimately gathered all this data and presented a series of options to the Town Council for going forward. So. Okay,
can you walk through the options and tell us what happened at the end?
Sure. Well, let me. My role in last night's was I compiled a timeline of all of the activities and all of the people that we had talked to, as a way of sort of organizing my thoughts and to be able to demonstrate to the town that we had been busy. And then we had, and one of the things that the original time when I began working on this, we were focused exclusively on finding a replacement for the gearbox, replacing it, getting costs for that sort of sources for the gearbox, and so forth. And partway through that whole process, we ended up realizing that there may be opportunities for us to form a public-private partnership to try and offload some of the risk of operating a wind turbine to a private partner. We put out an RFP that was basically a call to a solicitation for anybody who wanted to participate. We got 2 responses. We talked about those responses last night. We talked about, we had Don Roberts, a wind energy expert who had come to physically investigate our turbine, inspect our turbine, and give us some advice on. He wrote this beautiful report on what he had found. And then we had Seth and Paul. Seth Handy is an attorney in Providence who I have worked with in the past, and who actually defended the town of Portsmouth and a coalition of other communities in the Benjamin Riggs case some time back. So I turned to Seth, and he instantly turned us to Paul, the 2 of them, to help us to evaluate the responses that we had gotten to the RFP, and so that's where we are now. So we ultimately ended up proposing 3 options to the council.
Let me just
Sure.
step in here, because thinking back over the last 4 months, I think initially the focus was on trying to get this thing repaired and up and running, and I thought everybody thought it was just going to be a matter of a process of finding what the problem was, replacing the part, and moving on. Yeah. And I think bringing in the experts, you found out that it was a lot more complicated than that, particularly with the gearbox and things. And so the option that everybody's been straining or trying to get people to take really didn't make a lot of sense. You really had to step back, I think, and look at all the other options around this.
Well, that's right. I think that what we were charged with is finding the very best option for the citizens,
right,
taxpayers of the town of Portsmouth, and clearly we believe that we've come to that best
Absolutely.
option.
Well, those 3 options that were presented last night, do you want to go through them?
Sure. I'd be happy to. One is to simply scrap the machine, sell it as is, where is, or some variation of that, and then figure out how to pay off the $2.3 million note that we have outstanding on it. Number 2 is the first line of thinking that I was working so diligently on, is finding a source for replacing the gearbox and going back into operation, and hopefully identifying some sorts of strategies that we could used to prolong the life of the replacement gearbox and be back in business. And the third was to put out this RFP and to seek a public-private partner to help us with the risk and with the management and that sort of thing. So option 3 is what we instantly when we received the responses to the RFP, we realized that there was a lot of work to be done, and that we needed to be able to continue along that line of thinking, and holding the other 2 options in abeyance. We didn't want to really just completely discount those, because
right.
we may have to go back to one or the other. Who knows? But we wanted to move forward. So
well,
that was what we recommended to the
I think it's important when people read these, and I recommend they go on the town website and read these documents. By the way, I congratulate you on a masterful job of trying to pull all the history together. I think you did a really nice job. I know. I read through as much as I could. But I think it's important for people to note in option 3 that essentially you laid out what the goals for the town should be moving forward in this thing. The first was continuing the production of clean, renewable wind energy at the current site. The second was retiring the town's debt liability in a reasonable time frame, and the third is maintaining some kind of revenue stream from the project to help offset the town's electrical usage costs. So those were essentially a part of option 3, which essentially was selected by the council.
Yes, we were unsure about what sort of responses we would get, whether all 3 of these goals could be met, or we just sort of put it out there and said, here's what we would like.
Sure.
So what we recommended to the council was, and they ultimately did adopt this resolution, which reads that the town council accept the recommendation of staff to hold in abeyance options 1 and 2 and to pursue option 3 as presented, and further, that the town administrator, staff, and legal team be directed to enter into negotiations with both private sector bidders and to return to the town council at the earliest possible date with the most advantageous proposal for the citizens and taxpayers of Portsmouth. Now, there was one, Councilwoman Pedro, I believe, suggested that there be an additional amendment to this, that we consider going out for an additional, going out to bid again, basically, if these negotiations failed, or if we wanted to use that as a negotiation strategy, that we'd be able to go back out to bid again. So that's where we are. That's the direction that the council has given us, and that's where we're headed now.
So let me ask either one of you, Paul or you, Gary, what's the next step? Where do we go from here? That was yesterday. That was all the work you did yesterday.
Yeah, that's Paul.
Now here we are.
I'm done now.
Exactly.
So that's Paul.
The town took a good step in actually putting out an RFP that casted a big net to basically not define the RFP, so that you see what kind of creative solutions came back. And 2 of them came back. It would have been nice to receive more. We went through, part of my job in Seth was to evaluate those and see if it was in the best interest of the town. Our conclusion is that they were not at this point, but we opened up the communications with those 2 firms to ask them if they would be willing to sharpen their pencils and to open up the books and really dive in to make this a true partnership, be it formal or informal, going into this, so everyone could potentially get to the table and walk away from the table satisfied and not be one-sided in that respect, because it's a complex issue with a lot of complex moving parts and to be sorted out, and for the town to take this avenue, I think was a good decision, and there's a fiduciary responsibility to make sure they've explored all the alternatives.
Right.
On this. So what our next steps are is to continue the conversations with those 2 parties as far as their proposals and how it meets the strategies that the town wanted, those 3 points that he spoke of. and for what they don't meet, how can we pull that back into line and
Yeah.
really see if we can get to that point. Simultaneously, we're running parallel to the side of doing more due diligence of some of the issues. Don, as he mentioned, is the engineer who is getting more information on the gearbox changes. As you know, the company went bankrupt, so
Right.
it's not as simple information as one can get. So we are working now with the gearbox company and also with the original designers of the turbine to understand what needs to be done. Understanding what needs to be done helps us understand the cost that underlie that,
Right.
which helps us put us in a better negotiating position
Absolutely.
for the town. If you know what the cost and what it is, you really know what the room they have to play with and what we actually can work with.
I think Councilor Pedro's suggestion is a very good one.
Yes,
that we
I think it
also
is.
open this up further to other.
Because there were
bids.
other replies. There's other as we started doing our due diligence and reaching out into the industry. Myself, Seth, are very connected in the industry. Some people did reply. You know, there was a tight time frame because we're trying to move this along. They weren't able to reply. So the ability for the town to reopen that option up really can bring some more people to the table who have some better options, and we can actually define that RFP a little better based on the information we've received. Just, you know, some of the information we're getting was just in the past week, you know, that we were able to dig into, which really puts the town in a better position to point people in the right direction, but still leave a little of that creativity out there on that.
And we know that there are at least 2 other entities out there that expressed interest
Sure. So
with the
It
original
definitely makes
RFP,
sense to
so-
keep your options open.
Yes.
Let me ask you, Paul, has your firm done any of this kind of stuff before for a municipality? Are there any towns that have had similar things in the area? Or?
Us not directly. I mean, I'm a developer, an energy developer, which sometimes it's helpful for me to evaluate an RFP because usually I'm on the other side.
Right,
So I have a unique perspective, you know, working with the town of Portsmouth. But other towns are looking at this. There's some specific towns actually with this turbines who've gotten into this and realizing that it is a big undertaking.
Yeah.
There's a lot to doing that, and having a private partnership can be advantageous to the town.
Yeah, there's no question. I think that people have stepped back a bit from the initially lot of support for wind energy as an alternate energy source. And now they're saying, wait a minute, let's think this thing through. And it sounds to me probably going forward it would probably make sense to have a private-public partnership where you have professionals. Essentially, that's what their training and job is to simply do that.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've found out in the last week or so that we're really rather excited about is the Princeton, Massachusetts has 2 wind turbines identical to ours, and their town council, body of selectmen just in the last recent weeks has voted to essentially take option 3 with their turbines, that they are not interested in maintaining they don't want to own and operate turbines anymore, at least solely. And so we're really eager to go up and talk to them about maybe partnering with them and, you know, going out to somebody with 3 turbines to link
So they
up
actually
to.
have 2 of these turbines.
They have 2 of these turbines, yes.
And they've incurred some of the same problems that
Yes,
we
they
have
have.
here.
Yeah.
So part of our due diligence has really been creating a bit of a support group amongst the other entities that own these turbines to share information of issues, and so how we can actually work together, because the ability to go back to the manufacturer is not there. This is allowing us to actually collaborate together, and you know, there's a lot that can come out of that at this point.
You know, just again, I have absolutely no experience with any of this kind of thing, but I just from a standpoint of an average citizen here, do you have any kind of time frame, or how long does it take, for example, the town to generate an RFP or whatever you have to do to try to get bids, and then how long is the process of evaluating the bids and that kind of stuff? And I guess what the bottom line is,
How quickly can this be done?
because I think you're doing exactly the right thing by taking the proper steps and learning more about it. When can we see something happening up there on that at the wind turbine? I guess that's the question. I don't know if there's.
If you could take
guys
the
have an answer for
RFP
that.
process really is more defined by a town protocol.
Yes,
Okay.
the RFP took me about a month to write, and we put it out for a very short timeline. We realized that you know, the clock was ticking, and so this 4 months worth of work that we've been bringing, I'm sort of filibustering because I don't want to. I
understand you don't want to commit yourself to a specific time.
You know, I don't know. It took. Princeton had a gearbox. One of their turbines was offline for nearly a year. I hope to God we can figure out a way to do it in a whole lot less time than that.
But don't commit yourself. Because,
Yeah.
Because we see how these things are.
Yeah.
But it's time is of the essence. You know, the clocks. You know, there are underlying costs that the town incurs that, you know, that you don't want to just push it out.
Right.
But it's a balancing act of, you know, prudently moving ahead in a timely fashion.
And
but
I think the bottom line is the town still has to pay the note on this thing, so there's still money involved. One of the questions I had there that I just wonder if there are any state or federal funds that we might try to obtain for something like this. I mean, it seems to me if they're supporting alternative energy sources, they might want to help in something like this. Is that a possibility?
Paul may be able to talk a little bit more about what Seth has come up with as far as state and federal help. But the one thing I can say is that Town Administrator Klim and Dave Fauscher, our finance director, did go up to Rhode Island EDC, and part of our debt is with them, and they went up to discuss a forgiveness of part of that note, and you know, ongoing discussions. So,
okay, so there is a possibility of something like that, yeah.
And you know, we have spoken with the Office of Energy. Seth and myself visited. They're very interested. The industry's interested in what's going on
here.
There's just not only here in Portsmouth and Rhode Island, but actually outside, that there's a lot of eyes on this to make sure that this gets fixed and that it can move forward. So with that, we're trying to corral that energy, hopefully maybe turn it into some economics. But the OER has acknowledged that they are willing to help out in some cases, whether it's providing a MET tower for some testing that may need to be done within the feasibility. Potentially some economic help in other ways on getting through this feasibility period.
It's unfortunate that we're kind of a test case here, but on the other hand, I think it behooves us to do it right moving forward.
Well, we were pioneers. There's no question about it. We were the first,
sure.
And hopefully we can provide an example or a guide to going forward for others.
Best case moving forward with this thing. What is your vision of a best case for Portsmouth in this situation?
Well, mine is for us to forge one of these partnerships wherein we offload as much of the risk as we essentially is to accomplish these three goals. Is my vision for. Or at some level, these three goals that we continue to generate renewable energy on the site. The turbine's been there. People like it. You know, they identify. I think it would be just disastrous to just take it down and call it a day.
We had it on our transfer station.
Exactly. I mean, you know, so I think that that all certainly retiring the debt so that we're not, you know, there isn't a burden on the taxpayer, and then hopefully we can have some revenue at the end of it. But
I was on the group that helped put this thing together, and I think yes, we were very interested in green energy and all that stuff, but the whole point of it was to try to essentially bring a revenue stream to the town.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate that this mechanical thing happened to us, but I would like to see something towards the end at least where if at least the town doesn't have to lose money over this thing. and we might still get some benefit from the electricity generated from that.
That's our goal.
You know, and you know, you got to look back too on this project, and that this wasn't something that was bad that went worse. This was a very profitable project. It was very extremely profitable, very good for the town, and had this not happened, it really would have gone. This is a you know, it's a major hiccup to get through, but you also got to look back and pat yourselves on the back, and that, you know, I think after the offset of revenue, less the debt service and all the O&M expenses, you were still $400,000 to the positive within 3 years, which is pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah.
You know, the ability now to correct that and step away from some of the risk. Stepping away from the risk is stepping away from some of the revenue and some of the benefit, but if the town can get back to you know, somewhat of a positive position, I think it'll work for everybody.
Now, are there any plans for you guys to, say, report back to the council after a certain period, or how is this going to work?
Yeah, I haven't quite worked out the details yet, but I obviously I can't just let these guys.
Well, I can imagine that the council will be knocking on your door.
Where are you?
So yes, I am going to put in place some sort of reporting so that we can guide things going forward, and they'll hear about it certainly.
Well, you know, one of the interesting things about this whole project has been the availability of all this data that you're talking about. I saw the town councilor's briefing folder yesterday, about yay thick. I didn't read anywhere near that, but I did go online and took this couple of documents from the town website, and I thought it was good to see the report from this engineer. Yeah. I guess a highly respected engineer.
Very. Yeah.
About what some of the problems
stuff
might have been, et cetera. And it was all in very much detail, and it's available to the public. So I encourage everybody to go to the town website to take a look at these things. I would hope, too, that, in fact, I assume this thing with the options is also on the website?
It's not yet, but we can put it up there, and I would say that this document was in the council packet, so there's certainly, you can certainly see it in the town clerk's office, and, you know, I've got stacks of all that stuff in my office. If anybody wants any of this documentation or backup, I'd be happy to.
I know you've been very forthcoming to just about anybody that walks in there. I know it's tough trying to do your real job, whatever that is. But,
I forgot what it was.
Oh yeah.
But again, I think you're doing a great job moving forward here, and I guess that's the key to this thing, is just to you know, hopefully tell people in Portsmouth that there's an light at the end of the tunnel somewhere, and that we're pushing to try to get there. Well, what else would you like to say, Gary, about the process here?
Well, I just think that there's an opportunity here for us to really kind of start feeling good about the possibilities for the turbine again. I know that there's been a lot of bad press, and there's been a lot of stuff floating around out there that we're not, you know, who knows. But I think that this is a real, we now have a direction, we now have an opportunity to make it right. And I think that you know, I'm encouraged.
Now, you know, we talk about a public-private partnership. This seems to have a nice ring to it, I guess. But specifically, what does that mean? Does that mean we bring in a private company to repair or operate the turbine, or something else?
Potentially on that, yeah. Some aspects of the turbine, be it even the offset of the energy, is going to be retained by the town. There are also some, you know, the bond that was issued to do it restricts what can and can't be done with the turbine. So you still can achieve a structure and an economic result that offloads some of the risk to outside the town. But that kind of guides of what we can and can't do. So having that public-private partnership, and the town should have a vested interest. They've owned it before. They have a vested interest in how this moves forward. If it's going to offset your energy, you always have a vested interest in how that thing is going to operate.
Sure.
And it's in your best interest to retain some say in that.
Well, you know, several of us, a lot of us here in town, were down there every day when they were putting this turbine up. Mm-hmm. Right through the couple months of winter, and it was, you know, snow on the ground and high winds and everything else. Are there any prospects for like a company coming in and perhaps repairing this thing? You know, putting something else in, or are the thoughts that they'd have to replace the nacelle replace
one
the
of
system entirely? Or?
One of the proposals that we got was centered around doing just that, repairing the turbine and essentially leasing it from us and giving us and the lease payments would be essentially offsetting the current debt that we have. And then we would purchase electricity from them to make their side of the project work. The other was actually replacing our turbine with another turbine that would generate more power and that we would purchase electricity from them at a rate that would allow us to offset the debts. So, and neither one of them was really, and Paul can talk about this more than me, neither one of them was great, but there is opportunity
start. At least
for
it gave you some idea.
So there
what
were
people
two very different proposals.
Yeah. You know, I personally was, looked inside that nacelle before it went up there, and it's such a complicated piece of gear.
Yes.
It just seems like somehow a shame to get rid of this really well thought through piece of equipment.
Well, one of the things that was a real pleasure was listening to Don Roberts talk about it last night, and I just can't say enough about what a genius that guy is. And talking about
what were his thoughts about the whole thing?
Well, he thinks that there is he found serious damage in the gearbox, and that he's been working on figuring out how and why. And one of the things that is important here is to ask ourselves, why do we need to know why it failed? And if we intend to go ahead and replace the gearbox and do things to provide to lengthen the life of that gearbox, that we do need to know why this happened so that we can put stuff in place, better filtering or that sort of thing. And so that's the kind of thing that he's been working on. He checked the pitch of the blades, and I
know I started reading the report, but I'm not an engineer, so.
And he did an alignment check. They were not able to do a vibration test because we couldn't operate the machine, but he was just nuts and bolts right through the whole machine. It was very informative.
His take though was he said it is a very well built turbine. It's it's unfortunate about the gearbox, but he said it's a there were some areas that really impressed him on that turbine. But they are a very complex piece of machinery.
Well, absolutely, and I understand all that. I guess I think the idea that at least we've come to grips with this as a town now. I think through the actions of the workshop last night. How has the public response so far been on this?
I have today. I've had a couple of people come in and congratulate us on the quality of the work that we've put forward.
Oh, rightfully so.
Yeah, and I think that we'll probably see more of that. I think it was good.
Okay, so you haven't been firebound?
No, not yet. There's always going to be. I'm not going to convince everybody. That's for sure. But I think it was very positive.
Well, maybe there's hope for the town. Then I also hope that. We're getting semi-short on time here, but I also hope that as we move forward with this thing, we'd like to bring both of you, or one of you at least, back into the studio here and talk about the progress that we're making.
You can do that.
We'd like to see the progress being made. As you may know, and I have to throw a plug in right at the end, for the next year is our 375th anniversary as a town, which is actually pretty good even for New England. And so we're doing a lot of things, and a lot of us would love to see that turbine up and running in some form or another by next year, by our anniversary year.
We'll do our best.
That's about it for me for now. Look for both Gary and Paul perhaps on future editions of Portsmouth This Week. Doug Smith signing off. Have a great week.